Hi, and welcome to the M60A1 slash M60A3 review, and I've already bought this up because I'm supposed to be reviewing the M60A1 first, now I have A3. Give me a sec. So, to introduce the M60 series, they are not as good as the other MBTs in their tier. I'm going to say it right now. The Chieftain is a better Hesh thrower, the Magaks are basically better in every single way, the T-series are just flat out better for being tanks, and the Chinese usually have more DPM or sometimes armor and usually better guns as well. So the M60s are kind of undergunned and under-armored in a lot of cases. However, this isn't to say that they're crap. The M60A1, for example, does actually have several tools available to itself in its own tier. But first, let's go over the modifications. So recommended places to go for the M60 is first is the Rise Armor with ERA, which gives you basically ERA on your turret and your hull. This means that now missiles and Hesh shells and heat rounds have great difficulty in penetrating you, and as well as AP rounds it's also more difficult for AP rounds to go through you as well. Next off, basically go for all the guns here. A improved ready rack, improved reload speed by 9% is actually really useful for you. Smoke grenades, and if you wanted to go for improved tax after your ERA, you can do so. In fact, ERA, tracks, gun, smoke. Battle hardening the vehicle, I mean, unless you really want to grind through it, that's up to you really. Commanders wise, I would usually go for either Philip, who gives you a bunch of crew bonuses here: module damage, repair speed, crew damage, crew stats increase, and some Amarakian points as well, and finally crew resilience. He's basically an overall buff to your vehicle, but if you do have other commanders, you could always use Rachel, who is... I never really figure out who the hell they are. There we go. You could always use Rachel, who gives you a ridiculous amount of reload speed, increase per enemy within 50 meters. Yeah, there's a lot. She gives you a lot of acceleration and tread hit points as well. In fact, she gives you almost enough acceleration for you to have a first retrofit. Speaking of retrofits, I will go with improved gun breach, which will give you a 9% better reload speed. Improved filter system, so you suddenly don't go slow anymore. You're going at 8 to 8.86 instead of 10. And lastly, an improved Pioneer Toolkit, which combined with Philip will mean it is incredibly difficult to permatrack you. There is very few MBTs in the game, or at least the ones you can find at your tier, that will be able to track you. You have a sustained DPM of 3,829, which is actually going to get lower because I would not recommend taking an energy drink simply because of the level of heat and high explosive being thrown around, especially by objects. And if they get your side, which they will, they can shoot your engine, which is very, very exposed. So, of course, fire extinguisher, repair kit, first aid kit. Now, I did actually lie a little bit about this tank's capabilities because it does have extremely good Hesh shells. Let me show you what I mean. So, Chieftain. Tier 4, which we have here. Now, there you go. And to be honest, apart from that slight bit there, for the most part, you're better off using Hesh shells on a Chieftain, because you can pen it. Let's say an object, which I'll actually showcase this later, is incredibly difficult to pen. With normal rounds, as you can see here, you've got that thin lower plate, and that right there. But if you're using your Hesh rounds, look at that ammo rack. Driver, you basically, unlike the T-Series and the Chinese vehicles, you have the ability to take on objects, and in many cases, you can take on T-64s as well. Let me show you what I mean here. So this is the entire reason why I take HESH shells in my M60A1 is because, wow, look at that. It's glorious, especially if you aim up near this part, but most of the time I would recommend just going for the lower plate or the front plate overall, because you're going to do damage to them regardless. But you see what I mean here. You're not actually that crap when it comes to shooting other vehicles. It's just the point that the M60 is slow, its turret ring is big, the lower plate is huge, and the side armor is god awful. But you do actually have the means for people to underestimate you, and a lot of the times you can and will go after them. So let's have a look at the M60's protection. So this is with I'm going to go versus the Chieftain here. So the Chieftain can roughly pen you most of the time. HESH shells gets better. At this point, when you're using ERA, a Chieftain with HESH actually has a relatively difficult time of penning you, because that lower plate can actually be quite hidden most of the time, especially on ridges and stuff. But you see what I mean about going for the armor first? It is an incredible difference. You're basically green to just about everything on your tier with that. For instance, let's say a T64. T64 with AP is going to go you like butter, same for the heat rounds. But once you put on that ERA, look. There is a massive difference. So that ERA does genuinely help. Cruise skills wise, for the driver, I will go with off-road driving and field repair. Another 25% increase is great. Gunner, aim speed, and preventive maintenance. And loader, I would go with rate of fire and vehicle expertise, just so you can have a ridiculous repair rate. So overall, let's have a look at this thing's stats. So I'm going to compare it to the Chieftain, the Magak, and the T64A, possibly the most used MBTs in their tier that aren't premium. Right off the bat, the M60 has roughly the same damage as the Magak 5, but it lacks penetration and DPM. The Magak only has slightly worse DPM. It has a good slab of hit points combined with tie-in with a Magak, and a little bit less than a Chieftain. However, unlike all of these, and maybe except for the Magak, it does have extremely strong heat resistance. The Magak only having slightly better, and the turret is a good slab of armor as well. They all have roughly the same top speed, with the M60 being the second slowest in the tier, and it's also relatively heavy as well, which means ramming these is a bad idea. Turret traverse is a little bit meh, and well, relatively good gun depression as well, with a pretty decent aim time, and a relatively decent turret traverse as well. Circling one of these things is actually usually a bad idea, especially if you're in something that isn't a lightning fast AFV. As well as the fact your maximum deviation is the same as the Magak, while being slightly better than the T64A, but overall worse than the Chieftain. There's a general trend going along here. So, with all of this out of the way, let's have a look at the game.
To be fair, she's the one pointing the shotgun.
Yeah, she's raping somebody. Forcing someone to have sex with you is rape.
It is why the Slanesh Stash exists, is to have a place for all of the undesirable stuff.
Yeah, but rape is something else. In fact, I'm a hypocrite, because I posted that on my own server, and I need to delete it. There it is. I also need to delete the emoji as well. I didn't realise what it is.
Wait, what about the emojis?
Look in Sinesh's stash on Run server. Bottom down, scroll all the way down, and then find them in the build pivot. Or since someone has access at gunpoint, and I am not. Also, the M60 has an 8-second reload time. The fuck? Why? Also, ironically speaking, HEP and HESH rounds are more effective than AP rounds at this tier. Because the majority of vehicles with composite armor either has composite armor that's too light, or just solely steel armor. I mean, the Object 279, which is a vehicle renowned for seal clubbing, completely fails when you start taking HESH against it because it's purely steel armor, and the ammo rack is in the front of the vehicle. So there's a VBL down there. Be ready to shoot this guy. But okay, no, he's backed off, I think. And there's a Puma coming up. Need to be ready. Okay, Puma's down there. Damn it. Really not. Shit. What do you mean no pen? Really?
Gaming logic at its finest.
What is this no pen bullshit on the object? Really, game?
No penetration. How dare it? The penetration is the
This
best.
is our level of BS I'm having to deal with. I shouldn't be. It's also an object 279 as well. Great.
Identify. Hostile tank. Loader. Squash.
By the other one.
Armor status.
Okay, he's throwing HE. I mean, I can actually take that guy on if they just spot that one over there. You have 230 wings. I really need to kill this object because I don't think anyone over there is going to be able to be useful against him. So it's probably just up to me right now.
They almost hit us.
GBL.
Loader. Squash.
Yes, there we go, finally. In the T-72 round. Jack, what are you doing? Yeah, I think the Magak only now is realising what a horrible situation he's put himself into. He needs to take more hedge rounds, actually. I mean, I want to help him out, but I don't want to get killed by the object. The object's over there. So, for now, the Magak dug himself into this hole, and there's nothing I can do to help him.
Load. Squash.
Okay, he's backed off, I think. Okay. We're gonna regret this, but somebody's got to do it.
Loader. Squash.
Alright, let's see where Mr. Object has gotten himself into.
Identify
He
target.
is...
Hostile tank. Load. Squash. No pen. Guns prepared.
I fire
Load
HE as
squash.
much as you want at me, dude.
No pen.
Oh, Jesus Christ, the armor on that thing is fucking hilarious.
That moment when less than an hour to since the Solar Empire, and you're going to have a time.
Loader squash.
Ooh, hash. And that's why hash is so useful, because you can kill objects with it. If I was using AP, none of that would have worked. Also got a VBL to kill. Somewhere. Where is he? Okay, is it type 80 over there? What are you doing, type 80?
Identify. Hostile
Okay,
truck.
there's-
Loader Sabo.
damn it.
The track is hit.
VBL, I don't think you properly understand that. I'm not stupid. And he's just gonna pop up somewhere else, I know that.
Loader Sabo.
What are you doing over there, Type 80? Where are you heading? Where are you going?
Load Sabo. They almost hit us.
I mean, if this thing had better rate of fire, it'd be perfect. I don't think this Type 80 is very smart. Is he gonna ram me?
We've lost track.
You're special. Somebody... Bones, do you remember how heavy a T-62 is?
Identify. Hostile tank.
How heavy? What?
How heavy a T-62 is? It's like a little bit less than 38 tons. Do you remember how heavy an M60 is?
I can check.
You don't need to. All I need to tell you is that a fucking T-62
Identify target.
decided to ram my M60.
No effect.
Oh, this-
Load Sabo.
it's probably gonna shoot me.
Loader Sabo.
Killing those goddamn things with AP now. I don't have any cash left for them. Okay.
So who won the?
The tonnage contest. Take
Identify. Hostile truck.
There's a VBL. Okay, the VBL's over there now. That's made things less complicated. Yeah, an M60. Well, this is an M60A1, but the M60A3 is like 50, probably 53, 54 tons. And a T62 basically ran me. Very
Splat.
Identify.
extremely.
Hostile tank.
Wait, I thought the T60 was heavier.
No,
No?
no, the T62.
No. Still, I thought the T62 was heavier than the M60.
Trying to engage those goddamn things with AP rounds.
Cannons down. Tracks up. Moving out. Guns up.
Let's see. Just go.
No pen.
Where's that VBL and why is he not coming into my ass?
Target
Got him.
destroyed.
Even for an object, just exposing your lower plate like that is just dumb, dude. Okay, we're gonna move and take out this VBL now. Why he hasn't gone for the Tyrann yet, I don't know. Wish I had some hatch left over. In fact, I'm probably gonna need to load more hash rounds on this afterwards. Because against that object, they was well, the first object they were super useful. Okay, something's spawning me. Okay, it's around that area. Okay, the TAD's down there.
Load Sabo.
So it looks like I need to engage the TAD.
Identify. Hostile tank.
Why IT1. I don't think the IT1 can pen me. Come on, stay there, T80. Okay, T80 is down. It's just a Magaka Type 85 to deal with, and the Type 85 is out of the way for now. The VBL's dead as well. This means I just need to cope with 91. And the majority of my lower plate is still full, which is where he'll try to shoot me.
No effect. They hit us hard.
Close one to hit the ammo. Ammo rack back up.
Loader, Sabo.
He just got circled by an M60. That's a good that is a good prime killer right there.
What?
Wow. Okay, BMPs, please don't suicide. Actually, you know what? This rock here is a better position. Jesus.
Identify targets. Hostile tank.
Okay, that Magak is actually around there somewhere. There he is. Come on. Okay, the Magak's dead. We have a fighting chance against his T-72. I just need to basically rush him and keep him occupied. Most people expect the M60 to be a pushover, and it is.
Identify
But
target.
today I'm going to have to try and not. He can pen my lower plate, I can pen his, but my lower plate is significantly bigger than his is. So I'm going to have to basically be a giant distraction. And this is a pretty usual tactic to use. You smoke ahead of you. Okay, he's concentrating on me.
That was close.
Hi, how are you doing?
Load Sabo.
We better off cap him,
Ammo up.
to be honest. Ugh. He wasn't expecting me to do that. I wasn't actually intending to ram him. I was intending to get close enough so I could stick my shell into his turret and end him. Because now we've got a tier 5 Type 85 to deal with, who has a relatively weak lower plate, and I'm not sure if he'll be able to properly be able to go hold down. And why is the cap circle here and not over there? Regardless, I do have some cover now. Got 20 seconds until the smoke grenade is set. Regardless, the Type 85 will still probably go through me like butter, but he'll probably aim for the ERC first. Even though I'm the bigger threat, the ERC is squishy for heat rounds.
Squishy, squishy.
Squishy, squishy. Okay, 56 seconds to go. If he interrupts the cap circle, we won't be able to cap it in time, and instead, we're back.
The rest of the story you can't find anywhere else.
BMP or literally bear off going here.
It's all here.
If he runs into the Type 85 and dies, I'm gonna laugh. Okay, the Type 85 isn't there, so that means he's either going to come through that alleyway here, or over here, so I'm going to point my tank in this place here. I wouldn't smoke so soon, there's still a couple of seconds left. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Loader Sabo. Smoke out. Move, move.
Okay, I'm surprised I survived. Oh, 5,162 damage dealt. Gonna have to admit, the M60 did pull its weight, and I am quite surprised and that happy. You know, this tank is actually starting to grow on me. I just hope I could get a better reload time on it.
Yay.
So as you can see there, unfortunately I wasn't able to get a replay, so I had to use a live recording instead. So now we're going to move on to the M60A3, which is actually quite an interesting vehicle. In fact, I'm going to put up a comparison part here. There isn't really much difference. The M60A3 of course has vastly better penetration DPM and slightly better reload, but the armor is kind of the same, and it's only slightly better in many statistics. So I'll say the M60 is about 10% better. The M60 is kind of worse for its tier than the M60A1 is, simply because it's now dealing with heat and HESH resistant vehicles. However, that doesn't mean it's still bad. It just requires a little bit more effort, generally speaking. So modifications first. Most tactics when you use the M60A1 does apply to the M60A3. For instance, going for the ERA first. I would also maybe go for the engine, simply because it gives you an absolute massive boost, and then of course the gun does give you better as well. However, 370 penetration is still relatively viable in tier 5. You won't really go up that much against tier 6s. I mean, most of them will kill you if you're top tier, if you're fully upgraded anyway, so it doesn't really matter that much. However, the HEP, the improved rangefinder, the AP rounds, and the improved ready rack is still nothing really to sniff at, and they are actually quite decent. And then last you go to the smoke grenades. Retrofits as before, crew skills as well. I would actually recommend using Philip this time over Rachel, simply because since everything in your tier starts to get faster, getting within 50 meters isn't exactly that good of a thing. Apart from that, a quick comparison to the other vehicles in the same tier as well. Let's choose the Chieftain Mark 10, the Magak, the Merc, and the 64A. So as you can see here, the M60 is relatively outdone by most of these guys. However, the penetration is actually still quite good, being in the same league with the 6B, so it has the highest penetration in its vehicle. However, the DPM is heavily lacking, but the reload rate is actually relatively pretty damn good, I would say. Did I fully upgrade my T64A? No, I didn't. Give me a sec. Yeah, it's always better to use vehicles that are actually fully upgraded first. So, still the highest rate of fire here. Hit points still relatively good, with the Merc having the most. The hull is kind of tier 4ish, but it does hold up to heat rounds and HESH shells, I believe. But the steel composition does really hurt when you start to go up against high penetration HESH shells, which can go through the ERA. Max speed, joint second highest for the Maniac 6P. However, your 0 to 32 is actually massively improved here. Your hull traverse is still relatively lacking, but at least the turret traverse is actually still pretty damn good at 43 degrees a second. So overall speaking, it's more of a second line tank, I would say, in all honesty. If you can make it work, that's pretty damn decent when you think about it. And I would always take a relatively good stock of HESH shells. So the M60A1's armor compared to itself, as you can see here, can be kind of weird. However, the turret, parts of the front plate can often be 60% with this beak here. And I'm happy to report that at least there is a good degree of protection against HESH shells here. So we're going to quickly compare it to the rest of its tier. So for instance, a Chieftain with its AP rounds can still have some issues here. As you can see, that ERA does help the tank significantly, because with stock armor you're basically butter. However, with not, there's a pretty general trend going around here. At least the M60's armor does give it some protection against a lot of shells in its own tier. I'm actually quite glad of that. As well as the fact that the T64A may have some difficulty when you're going hold down, simply because it has like a less than a 50% penetration here. However, this turret ring is still very, very weak. But at least the heat rounds on the T64 won't really get you most of the time. But I would like to pay attention to that turret ring, which is incredibly difficult to hide. It's good you're not that vulnerable versus HESH rounds. However, Chieftains with HESH, if they can aim well, should still relatively be able to butter you, as you can see that big part here. Especially if they hit you in the turret, they're going for your breach, your turret ring, your gunner. They won't exactly be able to get your ammo rack since it's all the way down there, but it's still a relatively crippling spot for you. So I'll say your armor is at best 50-50. I mean, it's against, you know, seal clubbers and stuff, it's not going to hold up, but against new players and stuff, and maybe people who underestimate you, the armor should be able to hold up, as well as the fact you have very good penetration for your tier is always nice as well. And those HESH shells should at least be able to work versus most vehicles such as the Leopard 1A5, the Chieftains, the Merkava. I'm not actually sure, so we'll take a quick look at this. I like to make sure at least. Let's have a look. M60 is there. As you can see with the Merc, nice big fat lower plate there, and with HESH shells, you can actually go for the upper plate, which is pretty damn decent. And lastly, let's have a look, because your mainstay here, the worst vehicles you'll possibly go up against, is probably going to be the T-Series. So let's have a look how you do versus them. Right. You can pretty much butter the lower hull of the T64A. It will be weak to you at just about any angle, and then you will also be able to go for the ERA as well and parts for the turret. Most of the time when it comes to hitting these vehicles, I would recommend tracking them there or there. And then I wouldn't really bother with the HESH shells that much, but the HESH shells will be able to go through parts of the hull. It wouldn't be recommended, but if a T-Series does start face hugging you, you have the gun depression and you're taller than him, and you'll basically be facing him like this, to the point of which, wow, ammo rack. And interestingly enough, the T80, despite being the most advanced, air quote here, is actually the most vulnerable to your HESH shells, because it doesn't have any explosive reactive armor. As you can see here, a T80 can be quite a difficult opponent to go up against. It is supremely fast. It is pretty well armored to AP shells, but however, against HESH shells it kind of fails spectacularly. So, yeah, I wouldn't recommend in a T80 going up against an M60 driver who knows what they're doing. And you'll also be able to do the same with the Type 85, I guess. Let's have a quick look. So generally speaking, overall you want to be a roughly second line tank. Go hull down if you can, and thanks to your phenomenal gun and relatively heat decent armor, you should be able to stand up to most vehicles. And lastly, we're going to look at the missile resistance of the M60 before we look at some gameplay. So let's start off with a BMP2 that has a penetration of 600. The ERA holds up pretty relatively well here. Of course, a good BMP driver will be able to go for your lower plate, but if you're moving, putting yourself at an angle most of the time, there is actually quite a good deal of resistance going on here. And then let's also compare you to the VBL, which I believe has the highest missile pen in its tier. A TOW will still have issues. As you can see here, 630mm of pen can't actually go through. Which is pretty damn decent, to be honest. I wasn't expecting this, but probably might actually be the most missile resistance vehicle of your own tier, which is pretty good. And of course you do have ERA that covers your lower plate as well, so that works. And generally speaking, they're decent, bit meh. They're not exactly as deep as damage orientated as the T-Series, or as ridiculous as the Magax, or have the sheer firepower that the Chieftain does. But overall, if you underestimate an M60, I believe bad things will come to you, and use that underestimation to your advantage. It does have its strengths compared to the others. They may not be as good, but they are strengths, and always use that overall. And now let's have a look at a game. So this is going to be a live recording, because I've tried to look through my replays and my videos, and there wasn't one for the M60A3, so I'm actually kind of embarrassed for this. I think all my replays broke, So we are on Salzburg in Western Europe, and I have no idea how this game is going to go because, like I said, live recording. So the first thing we're going to do is compare our team to the others. The BMP-3 is better than the BMD-4, the BVP-2 is better than the Sabre, the Stingray and the Abrams will lose against the Magak and the Merc. They do have more Mercs though, which will generally kick the butt of our own tiers. We have a VBL, probably using Pally against that BMD-2, Sheridans cancel each other out. I am better than the Leopard 1A5. We have a Magak, better than the Merc, T64A, T64AV, and 2 IT1s. So overall, I would rate their team as being better than ours, but as you know, it doesn't always work out that way. So I'm gonna try and be sneaky and go hold down in as many places as I can. The hull is pretty butter to those Magaks, but at least I should be relatively resistant to that Sheridan over there. So let's see how this match goes. The acceleration is massively improved. It's from like a 900 horsepower engine on the A3 compared to the 700 and something on the A1. So, like I said, faster. It's not really going to help that much in the grand scheme of things, but you will be able to shift better. And as you can see here, we are definitely shifting. I mean, it's no T80, but at the very least, we're not that completely useless. And at least the render model does like nice. When shooting the other side of an M60, always go for the engine deck. It's not covered by anything, and the tracks and the wide, massive tracks and wheels can actually be a little bit troll sometimes. However, they are still relatively easy vehicles to track. So, for the most part, side scraping is never really that much of an option simply because you can expose your engine deck. But a little bit of side scraping can at least help you out, and I should be loading AP here, since I'm probably going to be facing those Magaks and the Merc. Going frontally onto things is not going to be a good idea. So let's see what's going to happen. We're facing mostly Russians here. There's an Abrams who's like down there, going to shoot. See if we can get a tracking shot on him at least. I imagine I might be the one spotting here. And of course the enemy team, there could be some hold down vehicles down there, IT1 and everything. Let's see what we can do. Okay, we missed, but we can go for this IT1, which my armor should be relatively resistant to. Let's back up, back up, back up, back up, back up. Magak 7C is a tier 6, so at most I'm probably better off going for a tracking shot on this guy. We are very heavily outgunned down here. The majority of our team is kind of just fucked off to the center. We have a T-72B that's AFK, and in all honesty, given the sheer power of the Magaks now, I'm very likely to lose versus this guy. Let's see if we can... No, we can't. Okay. So, we've damaged his ammo rack, and at least he knows at this point that I can start hurting him, and I'm pretty sure he bounced on me. So, I'm 1-to-1 with this guy. The aim time and everything of the M60 can be a help. We got a tracking shot on that guy down there. Let's see what we can do. See if we can hit the ammo rack again. I'm pretty sure he repaired, so maybe. Beautiful. There we go. Oh shit, he repaired. Today's not gonna go well. Oh. And that Abrams is having issues towards us, but at the very least we have given that Magak a bloody nose. As you can see here, I'm pretty sure they just underestimated the armor, and that guy is now feeling the pinch. At the very least we might be able to hold off our team down here, and I'm... Okay, he's going for the same place again. The M60A3 has a very, very tight armor angle you can use, and I'm pretty sure I used it to the point in which they tried to go through the upper plate. And at the very least, that Magak down there should be able to help me out and give me some supporting fire. This is very dicey, I would say, but we do need to. And I'm pretty sure they're going to start rushing in now, so we're going to start backing off. No. Okay, so they just smoked up for the fun of it. Most of the time when people smoke up like that, you know they're going to start rushing. We need to back off, back off, back off, back off, back off, back off, back off. Let's see if we can track him.
Target immobilized.
Let's just track this guy as much as we can. May need to hide behind this Magak.
Ammo up.
Shit, I need to... Okay, no. No Magak. No. We're just all trying to run away from this stupid Merc at this point. The Merc side armor, you can go through it pretty well. I'm actually surprised why the enemy just hasn't started going down that other side yet. But we've done almost our hit points and damage, so I will do this as a... Okay, I now have done my hit points and damage, and I got killed by those guys on the other side. So, as you can see there, the rate of fire was enough to at least keep that Merkava, and any of them perma-dracked if I hadn't have run away, well, if I hadn't backed off at that point. Unfortunately, my team will lose this one because, well, they don't seem to be particularly smart individuals, as I said. The enemy team did kind of overpower us on the front, and the inclusion of MBTs on this side, for instance, that Merkava, kind of useless. So, things to review, the armor did actually hold up. We had quite a couple of bounces. For instance, and that Magak was not expecting an M60 to be able to damage him like that. Like I said, going for the tracking shot and the fact that the ammo rack is, you can be tracked on that Magak is also a good thing. We weren't really able to damage the Abrams that much. As you can see, the lower plate was a yellow. You can go through the for the turret ring and for the turret, but being in front of a MBT like that can usually be a pretty bad thing. Overall, we did manage to get to the fight pretty quickly with the acceleration, which is always a good thing. However, as you can see here, my team was just kind of crap. We had camping tier 6s in the back, as well as the fact that a lot of my team exposed their side armor. I managed to survive a couple of more hits than I should have done, thanks to the armor angling and the fact that these guys kind of had a little few issues going through the front plate of an M60, which is actually kind of funny when you think about it. We don't really have that many side shots on me. In fact, I'm unsure if they did. I think this guy wants to team kill the T-64. Not sure. But regardless, at this point, kind of knew I was going to lose. Their team just overpowered us completely. And the Magak is generally better than the M60, to be honest. Even the tier 4 Magak is better than the M60A1, the tier 5 Magak is better. You get the idea, but overall, if you underestimate them, the M60s can really kick you. In PvE, they're a little bit more useful, thanks to the fact that the bots literally can't aim for shit. And now let's have a look at the post-game stats on this mission. So, overall, I would say I did better than I expected to. That ammo rack on that Magak over there was absolutely glorious, and I'm pretty sure that guy had to use his fire extinguisher for the first time in his life. 3,429 damage. Good bit of damage here, 2,000, and then another couple of hits there. And I came relatively almost near the top of my team, doing only slightly less than another Magak and those two guys there. Overall, I bounced 2,000 damage, which is actually quite decent considering this was coming from tier 6s. However, I'm overall satisfied with that game. As you can see here, those guys just bounce. They didn't really know where to aim. But I was surprised. And that is the M60 review for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope this at least helps you out a little. That's about it, I guess. Like and subscribe. I do reviews, game guides, regular PvP stuff, PvE stuff, some global ops. I hate global ops. And I play Armored Warfare on Fridays, which is today, PvP, Wednesdays, PvE, AW some other times, PTS server. I play other games on Thursdays. And if you'd like to help out the stream and me, I am currently trying to buy a Christmas present for my fiance. There is a Streamlabs description below, and if you'd like to help out with that, consider donating. So for now, take care everyone, and I will see you all later. Bye!